Today, we become legends.
God releases in Smite are a pretty polarizing topic. Some are drastically underpowered, but most are overpowered in some way. Some are well designed and fun, and some are toxic or completely unworkable and need a rework. Some innovate the design space of Smite and bring new things, and some just return old ideas and continue the status quo while adding nothing new. Well, today we're going to look back at Smite's God releases and rank every season's releases out of 10 on 3 categories. Fun factor? How fun the God is overall and how healthy they are for the game in terms of their kit. This one is the most subjective of them all. Balance? How close to balance these gods were at release and how quickly they were changed to be balanced. Overpowered or underpowered releases will take points away from this score, as will gods that were left in a bad state of balance for a long period of time. And finally, innovation. This score will measure how many new ideas or mechanics the gods of a certain season brought to the table that we've never seen before. More new things equals a higher score. Alright, so let's just jump straight in with Season 1. Season 1 ran from the 25th of March 2014 to the 11th of February 2015 and encompassed these god releases: Kumbhakarna, Osiris, Janus, Rama, Serket, Cabrakan, Sylvanas, Nox, Aokwang, Awilix, and Huyi. So let's cover balance first. Season 1's balance in terms of god releases was not good. Janus, Cabrakan, Nox, and Huyi were all terribly underpowered at release, which in my opinion is worse than being overpowered since it puts a bad taste in people's mouths from the very start. Sylvanas was also massively overpowered and the best god release we'd seen in a long time at that point, while the others were reasonable, perhaps a little OP, but nothing too crazy. However, since half of the god releases this season had major balance concerns and the rest had small concerns, I had to give the balance for Season 1 a 4 out of 10. Now for fun factor. Season 1 was pretty good for this in my opinion. Like I said before, whether a god is quote fun or not is largely subjective, but for me, a lot of very cool gods were released in this season. Janus released Nox before her rework was actually really fun. Awilix, still one of the most fun and interesting assassins we have. Cabrakan has a very unique playstyle among Guardians that I find pretty fun. Huyi came with a lot of interesting mechanics. The only gods I'd say that aren't really fun from this list are Osiris, Rama, and Kumbha. The first two are just quite generic and not that exciting to play for me, and Kumbha is just a toxic and annoying god in my opinion. So overall, I think I'll give Season 1 a fun factor of 7 out of 10. And finally, innovation. Season 1 brought a fair amount of new interesting mechanics and kits. Janus was and still is one of the most unique gods of all time with his new portal mechanics. Pre-rework Nox brought a ton of new stuff to the table and explored a lot of previously unexplored design space. Huyi's triple bounce was very unique at the time, along with the way his jump worked. Serket's focus on true damage and correctability order was interesting. Sylvanas' ranged AoE basic attacks on a Guardian was something we'd never seen before. There is more, but for the most part, most of these gods this season brought something new and innovative, aside from maybe Osiris or Aokwang. Overall, I give Season 1 a 7 out of 10 for innovation as well, which gives Season 1 an overall score of 18 out of 10. Let's see how that stacks up to the other seasons. Season 2 ran from the 11th of February 2015 to the 2nd of February 2016. The gods released in Season 2 were Bellona, Medusa, Apwash, Ratatoska, Raven, Khepri, Xingqian, Sol, Chiron, and Amaterasu. Okay, so kicking it off with god balance. This was not good. Bellona, the second most OP god release we've ever seen. Medusa, OP at release. Apwash, OP at release. Rat, probably top 5 most broken releases of all time. Raven, complete trash that required a rework to make him playable. Xingqian, OP at release. Sol, probably another top 5 or at least top 10 most OP releases of all time. Chiron, a little too strong at release, and Amaterasu, pretty okay. As much as I like this season overall, it is my favourite season, I can't help but give the god balance a score of 1 out of 10. You don't get much worse than releasing 3 of the top 5 most broken gods of all time in one season, and also one of the most underpowered and trash ones that required a rework. It pains me to do it, but that's how it has to be for Season 2. Moving on to fun factor, however, this is where Season 2 can recoup some points from me. The season started with Bellona and ended with Amaterasu, my 2 favourite gods of all time and some of the objectively best designed gods in the game. Pre-rework Rat was insanely fun to use with his old 4 acorns and multiple dashes. Raven, despite being trash, was still very fun to play around with. Khepri's res mechanic has brought joy to many people's faces as they get brought back to life. Pretty much the only unfun god released this season was Apwash. I personally think Medusa and Chiron are pretty boring, but I can see why people would like them and they're not completely unfun. Overall, I give the fun factor of Season 2 a 9 out of 10. And finally, we have innovation. Between Rat's acorns, Bellona's weapon switching mechanic, Khepri's res, Medusa's camera related CC, and Apwash's corpse resource, I'd say this season had some solid innovation. However, there were also gods that fell a little flat in that regard, like Jing Chen, Chiron, and Medusa's kit outside of the ult, of course. But I think based on the things that were innovated this season, it deserves a score that's a little above average, so I'll go with 6 out of 10 for Season 2's innovation. So that gives Season 2 an overall score of 16 out of 30, dragged down mostly by the balance category where it scored a 1 out of 10. Season 3 ran from the 2nd of February 2016 to the 1st of February 2017 and encompassed Raijin, Skadi, Jingwei, Susanoo, Fafnir, Erlang Shen, Terra, Izanami, Camazotz, Thoth, Nike, and the Morrigan. For balance, this season was decent overall. Raijin was a bit weak, Skadi was pretty OP, Susanoo was broken as all hell, Erlang was very OP as well, Thoth was pretty weak, Nike was broken, but overall, the balance of most of these gods when compared to other seasons, especially coming out of Season 2, was not too bad. I think they learnt their lesson a little bit from Bellona, Rat, Sol, and the like in the previous season. Overall, I give Season 3's balance a 7 out of 10. There's some outliers like Susanoo, Erlang, and Nike, but overall it wasn't too bad. Fun factor, however, is a different story. This is probably biased and might not be shared by everyone, but I think Season 3's god releases were some of the least fun ones we've ever seen. Don't get me wrong, Susanoo, Erlang, Fafnir, and Terra were very fun, but the rest were either pretty mediocre like Raijin, Jingwei, Thoth, Nike, and Izanami, massively toxic and unfun like Skadi, or outright broken and unplayable like the Morrigan. Mori is a god that is now very fun, but we're talking about during the season she was released, and for the short time in Season 3 that she was available, she was bugged so much that she was practically unusable, and so I have to put her in the not fun category for this. Overall, I gotta rate this season pretty low for fun. There were some exceptions like I mentioned earlier, so it's not complete garbage, but I think a 3 out of 10 for this season is fitting overall. And finally, innovation. Mori's ultimate is one of the biggest and most ambitious new designs we've ever seen. However, other than that, we actually didn't see too much in terms of new mechanics this season. Nike's passive and ult were pretty interesting, Skadi's pet mechanics were pretty unique at the time, Iza's auto attacks are cool, and Terra's ultimate was definitely an innovative take on a Guardian ultimate, but in general, a lot of these designs this season didn't innovate that much. Kama, Erlang, Thoth, Raijin, and Jingwei sort of didn't really bring anything new to the table aside from minor mechanics like Jing passive or Raijin ult. There was still a lot of new stuff brought to the table, but compared to the innovation of previous and future seasons, Season 3 felt a bit lacking for me. I'd rate this one a 4 out of 10, pretty average where most seasons are normally above average for this, which gives Season 3 a total score of 14 out of 30, the worst score yet. Moving on to Season 4, which is widely regarded as the worst season in Smite history, let's see how it stacks up in terms of god roster. Season 4 ran from the 1st of February 2017 to the 30th of January 2018 and contained less gods than the previous seasons. Kuzenbo, Cernunnos, Ganesha, Daji, Cuchulainn, Artio, Hachiman, Discordia, and Cerberus were the gods released in Season 4. Okay, so balance. This season was a bit of a mixed bag, but was generally not too bad. Kuzenbo was obviously a complete meme of a release and probably top 3 weakest gods of all time, while Artio was ridiculously broken with her cripple instantly going on cooldown, along with Cernunnos' release where he was busted as well. Daji was also pretty weak at launch. Because of the outliers of this season being way too strong or weak, I think I have to give this season 6 out of 10. Slightly above average because a lot of the gods were pretty balanced, but those outliers bring it down. Fun factor for Season 4 was also a mixed bag. There was some very fun releases like Cuchulainn, Ganesha, and Cerberus, some decent ones like Hachiman, Discordia, and Cernunnos, and some pretty bad ones like Kuzenbo, Artio, and Daji. I think a rating of 5 out of 10 fits this one pretty well, very average, some good mixed in with some bad. And finally, innovation. Season 4 had mostly lots of small innovations but nothing huge. The biggest thing Season 4 innovated was Cuchulainn's whole rage mode thing, which was and still is very unique. The rest, however, was just small stuff like Discordia's one having unique targeting effects, Cernunnos' one, Hachiman's extra range to an extent, though that technically already existed with X-Bal before him. Overall, I think innovation was pretty stagnant for this season outside of Cuchulainn. Hell, they even took a previous ultimate and just slapped it onto Ganesha, which I will admit fits the character very well, but in terms of pure innovation, taking an ultimate from an old character and just slapping it onto someone is a no-no. So I'll give Season 4 a 3 out of 10 here, which gives Season 4 an overall score of 14 out of 30. Same as Season 3, though it was definitely more successful in some areas and less successful in others. Moving on to some hopefully higher scoring seasons, let's take a look at the season that turned Smite around after Season 3 and 4. Season 5 ran from the 30th of January 2018 through to the 11th of February 2019. We saw 6 gods this season due to Hi-Rez slowing down the pace of god releases from this point onwards from every month to more like every 2 months or so. Achilles, Chernobog, Baron Samedi, Pele, Hera, and King Arthur were the gods for Season 5. So balance. Season 5 was for the most part a season of powerful gods. Hera was weak and Chernobog was pretty balanced on release, but the other four, being Achilles, Baron, Pele and Arthur, were all very strong at release. With Baron of course being the highlight of this season and one of the most broken releases we've seen in a long time. Arthur too was incredibly strong, though it took a little bit of time for people to realise his full potential, and by that point we were in Season 6, so I'm not counting Arthur as a truly broken release, just a very powerful one. And Pele and Achilles were just overtuned in general and pretty damn strong. So for this season I gotta give them a 4 out of 10 for balance. With only 6 gods, it's hard to get a full picture, but if 2/3 of the gods released were noticeably overpowered, I think Season 5 has to take a hit in the balance section here. For fun factor though, Season 5 was very good in my opinion. Chernobog is the only god released this season that I didn't find fun. Achilles is awesome and can play multiple roles effectively, which is great. Baron was very fun if you take out the fact that he was so broken, which for this section I do since I'm considering their core design and kit, not their balance point really. Pele is a very fun and quite unique assassin. Hera is a pretty fun mage overall, I like her Argus pet mechanics and all that, and King Arthur is one of my favourite gods of all time and super fun for me. So overall, I give Season 5 an 8 out of 10 for fun factor. Not quite on the level of Season 2 for me, but a solid season for fun nonetheless. And finally, innovation. Unfortunately, with so few gods compared to the other seasons, it's harder to score as many points for innovation since there's physically less design space to work from. However, King Arthur as a whole was very ambitious and innovative, Hera's ult is one of the most unique mage ults in the game, and Baron's whole kit was pretty innovative in itself, along with Achilles having some cool uniqueness with his ult being a resettable execute. However, there was still a fair bit of standard boring stuff in a lot of these god kits, especially Chernobog and Achilles base kits, so overall I'll give this season a 6 out of 10. That's being generous because there's so few gods to work from in this season. If this was a normal season with more like 10 god releases instead of 6, it will probably be a 5 out of 10. So Season 5 comes in with a grand total of 18 out of 30, tied with Season 1 so far for the best god roster overall. And finally we have Season 6. I won't be covering Season 7 in this video since as of making this video we're only halfway through, so a lot is yet to be shown about the roster. Season 6 was sort of a middle ground between Season 5 and past seasons in terms of number of god releases, being 8 total in this season compared to the 10 or 11 of past seasons and the 6 of Season 5. So for balance point of the Season 6 gods, I have to say this is a low point for the more recent seasons. Merlin, broken. Yhorm, very strong. Horus and Set, actually okay, I was very happy with the balance point of these two releases. Olorun, a bit weak but not too bad. Then we get into the last 3 gods. Persephone, best god in the game and still one of the best even now a year later. Yemoja, broken as fuck on release and still a top support even now, and Heimdallr, one of the most busted hunter releases since Cernunnos and still a top ADC now. These last 3 really dragged the season down in terms of how ridiculously overpowered they were, while also not getting nerfed anywhere near fast enough, and in some cases not at all. It's sad because in the middle of this season they had a string of very well balanced releases with Horus, Set and Olorun, but then fucked it up royally with the last 3. I can't give this season anything more than a 2 out of 10 on balance, and the only reason it's not a 1 is because of those 3 releases that I just mentioned. Moving on to fun factor however, and this season can earn back some of those lost points. A vast majority of the gods released in Season 6 were and still are very fun for me. The only exception really being Persephone and Heimdallr to an extent. Once again, I'm considering their kits as a whole here, not their balance point, since I already gave them a score for that. So gods like Merlin that are very fun and interesting for me, but were also overpowered and thus frustrating, will still score highly in this section. Persephone's kit is annoying and frustrating, and she's a stain on this otherwise amazing roster of gods in terms of design. But Horus and Set are so much fun to play with. Olorun is very unique and magical ADCs are always interesting. Heimdallr, if you take away his ultimate and teleport mechanics, is pretty fun, and the rest like Merlin, Yhorm and Yemoja are just good fun to use. I'll give the fun factor of Season 6 an 8 out of 10, taking off 1.5 points for the cosmic mistake that is Persephone, and another half a point for some of Heimdallr's kit being frustrating to play against. And finally we have innovation. This one is where Season 6's roster really shines above all other seasons. Merlin has his triple stand switching mechanics, Yhorm has his massive size, immunity to knockups, and his ult is quite unique too. Horus is a clear support warrior which is unique in itself, but they also innovated pretty heavily with his ultimate. There's nothing else like it in the game really besides maybe Janus ult. Set has his whole spawn clones thingy. Olorun has the ability to slow down and speed up time itself. Persephone has the whole PvE farming with plants thing. Yemoja has Omi and no cooldowns, plus her 1 is some slightly new design space as well. and Heim has the crystals and his larger focus on vision and awareness. Literally every god this season had at least one major innovation in their kit, and a lot of them had some minor stuff too, like Umoja's 1, Yorm's ult, Persephone's ult, etc. Honestly, I think based on the fact that I couldn't be happier with all the innovation in Season 6's roster means I have to give it a clean 10 out of 10. If they keep this level of new mechanics and innovations up for future seasons, I will be a very happy chappy. So with that said, Season 6 gets a total score of 20 out of 30, beating out Season 5 and Season 1 by 2 points each, and smashing Season 2, 3, and 4. The final scores were Season 1, 18, Season 2, 16, Season 3, 14, Season 4, also 14, Season 5, 18, and Season 6, 20. Of course, this is just one man's opinion, and while I did take into account objective factors like balance and innovation, there was a bit of personal taste added in there with the fun factor sections, so I'm sure some of you will disagree with my scores and some will agree, so let me know in the comments down below, and if you want to explain your ratings and why you've given what you've given them, I might heart your comment if you have some interesting reasons why. But that's it from me. If you have any other ideas for things I could rate in a season in a similar format, then leave those down below, and I'll catch you guys in another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.